Hello, friend. This is your leadership guide, Dr. Kim Moore. Welcome to the Remote Master Class. During this master class, we will examine 10 common mistakes your remote team should avoid. You will learn how to get yourself and your team on the right track for high performance in a remote work environment. Now, this masterclass is ideal for any remote worker whose team is underperforming, feels isolated and disconnected, or is unsure about what productivity tools to use. So I just want to take a moment to welcome each of you to today's masterclass. So I want to say good morning to Tina. Hi, Deborah. How are you today? Good morning, John and Linda and with Colleen. We've got so many people today. So I just want to say welcome to each and every one of you. I want to say thank you for being here with us today. And I am excited. So I hope that you are excited for this master class on remote work. So thank you for joining us. I'd also like to welcome our friends on YouTube and Facebook. Now, if you're on YouTube or Facebook and you would like to download a copy of the Masterclass worksheet, please go to kimdmoore.com. On the home page, scroll down to the Remote Work Master Class calendar event. Click on the View Details, and that will take you to the registration page where you can enroll and download the worksheet. For those of you who are previously registered, if you haven't done so, please take a moment to download the Masterclass worksheet. Now you can find a link in your Masterclass reminder email. I'm also going to place a download link in the offer tab so you can download it now. I highly encourage you to download the worksheet. Now, why? Because it's going to give you an opportunity to gather information, critical information that we're going to share today, but also it will serve as another tool for you to put in your toolbox that you will be able to use at a later date as necessary. So please take the time to download the masterclass worksheet. Now, if you don't have the worksheet, please make sure you have a means to take notes. You know, research is very clear around how we learn material, and writing things down helps to engrave them in our memory, which means they'll be available later for us to draw upon when we need it. So take the opportunity to either download the masterclass worksheet or have some paper, a pencil, and a pen that you can take notes. Now, during this masterclass workshop, webinar, you're going to see me moving my head. That's because I am checking the chat box for comments. So please just be aware I'm working with multiple screens, and so I have to look away. So I'm not being distracted. I'm focused on you today. You're getting my 110% of my attention. So thank you for that patience. And I see we have some more people who have joined us. So good morning. Now let's do a quick check to make sure our technology is cooperating. You should be able to participate on iOS, Android, Mac OS, and Windows operating systems. Now, depending on your device, you may have everything on one screen, or there may be multiple tabs. You should be able to hear my audio, see my video, and view the presentation slide. Please let me know by using the poll tab on your device. Now, to maintain your privacy, the identity of all poll responders are anonymous. So let's take 10 seconds to respond. So once again, you're going to your poll tab and you're going to respond if you can hear my video, hear my audio, see my video, and view my presentation slides. I see we're almost at 100%, so I'm going to give you another 5 seconds before I close the poll. Okay, the poll is going to close. Now, I see that we do have a few people who are having issues. So if you're not receiving the audio, video, or the slides, please refresh your browser and log in again. Okay. Now, we'll have a question and answer session at the end of this master class. However, if you have a question before then, please enter it into the chat box. I will try to answer your questions during the webinar, but if I don't, I'll answer them at the end for as long as time permits. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. As you can see, throughout my career, I have worked in many environments. Now, this is me in my current remote environment, my home office. And if you're wondering, why does the picture look different than what you're currently seeing? That's because I'm working in my husband's home remote environment today for this webinar. But on the picture, you see me in my home office. You know, throughout my career, I've had different roles which have impacted my remote work experience. Yeah, I've been a student. I'm the product of inner city public schools, and I have several degrees to include a bachelor's in biology, a master's in administration, an educational leadership specialist, and a doctorate in education. And throughout my educational experience, I've had to work remotely in different situations because in the world of education, we now incorporate a lot of distance learning. And so that means we're working on our computers, connecting with individuals who do not necessarily live in the same location that we live or in the same time zone that we live. We connect with people from different cultures and different backgrounds. And I've had to do that. I am the proud mother of 5 adult children. Yes, 5 children, 5 grandchildren. And that number 5 seems to really connect in our family, as you can see. But the unique thing is, our 5 children with our 5 grandchildren live in different locations. In fact, only one of our grandchildren live where we currently live, where my husband and I live. So we connect with our children and our grandchildren through technology because they're all over. One of our children serves in the military, and we've had to connect with him and his family through times when they lived in Europe, when he was stationed in Afghanistan. So using different technology platforms and connecting remotely is a way of life for us. I'm an educator. So I've been a teacher and a supervisor and a district level person. as well as in my current role as an assistant superintendent. And we are currently still working from home. A leadership consultant, and just like I'm doing today, I do webinars and workshops, which I do primarily using different technology platforms as a certified DISC trainer and career coach. So you can see throughout my work experiences, I have worked with different environments and different technologies. And last but not least, I am a retired military officer. And so throughout my military career, I had the privilege of working in many different remote environments where I had to connect with different people and different organizations using technology and working as a member of a remote team. So now you have a little bit about myself and why I feel that I can present to you some tricks of the trade that will help you be more successful. Now, for some of you, this is the fifth training I have conducted on remote work. We have discussed 10 success strategies for working remotely. And these were strategies for anyone who is working remotely. It didn't matter if you were the team leader or a member of the team, if you had been working remotely for a long period of time, or you were new to remote working. We discussed 10 strategies that would help you become more productive and help your team increase its productivity. In the second training, we talked about 10 success strategies for leading remotely. And this was targeted toward individuals who are the team leaders. But it also provided an opportunity for inspiring leaders. So maybe you weren't the leader or aren't the leader right now, but you want to be a leader. And the strategies that we talked about were how to build an effective team that was high performing. The third training was around 10 success strategies for coaching remotely. Because in order to have a highly effective team, especially when that team is working remotely, you have to provide virtual coaching to increase performance. So we discussed different strategies to enhance the coaching experience and to increase the productivity of all of the team members, including the leader. Last was the remote workshop. And remember, that was our 90-minute live workshop that we did, where we really went in depth around the strategies that we had talked about in the first three sessions. And in that workshop, I gave you very specific examples of how I have used those strategies, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so successfully, and the strategies that we could all put into place to help us be more effective. And then this week is the last training in the series, the Remote Work Masterclass. Hopefully, these trainings have added value to your remote work life. Now, although this is the last training in the series, it's not the last training available. In the coming weeks, I will be launching my new online course, Leading Remote Teams. And I am so excited about this opportunity. So let me share just a little bit about it. This course will teach you how to lead an inspired, effective, and productive remote team. I'm so excited. My words are stumbling today. So I want to encourage you Keep your eyes on your email for the upcoming announcement because it's going to be a great online course that will help you be more effective in leading remote teams. Now, let's begin our remote work masterclass with a question. What's the greatest challenge your remote team members are currently experiencing? Are they underperforming? Meaning things just aren't going as well as they should be. We're not meeting all of our deadlines in a timely manner. We're not performing as we normally would be or should be performing. So, is the team underperforming? How about, are members of the team feeling isolated and disconnected? Maybe you're new to remote working. And so you're accustomed to working in an environment that you're doing face to face interactions most of the day. And maybe you're feeling now a little isolated and disconnected. And maybe there are other members of the team who are feeling isolated and disconnected. And maybe that's the greatest challenge that your team is experiencing. Or maybe you're unsure about what productivity tools to use. Once again, there are numerous tools out there, but which tool is most effective in helping you and your team members be productive in this remote work environment? So please answer using the poll tab on your device. What's the greatest challenge your remote team members are currently experiencing? Let's take 10 seconds to respond. And remember, your answers are anonymous, so please be candid. So once again, use your poll tab. And I still see we have a few people who have 5 seconds, and then we're going to close the poll. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the poll now. So I can see that roughly 15% said underperforming, 23% said feeling isolated and disconnected. Okay. And 62% were unsure about what productivity tools to use. Thank you. That is very helpful as we move through our webinar. I do want to thank you for your responses. I really appreciate them because it really helps me to understand how I can share my experiences with you to help you. And I see we do have some questions in the chat box. So, John, you make an excellent point. It is so important to know what your team's experience with remote working was or is, because if that person is new to remote working, the transition could be very challenging for them. And you, as a team member, can help them transition much more smoothly and reduce their frustration level, which will also benefit the team. Because if one member of the team is not functioning at the high level that they should be, it directly impacts every team member. So understanding their prior experience with working in a remote environment is critical to the team's success. So thank you, John, for that point, because that is true. And uh, we've got some other questions about considering a webinar on transitioning back from remote to local. And that's definitely something, Deborah, that we can consider as a part of our webinar series. So thank you so much, everybody who's been posting in the chat box. It's a great opportunity for you to connect with each other, as well as ask me questions that I can share with the group as far as giving you maybe some helpful tips. So as I've shared, throughout my career, I have experienced those remote team circumstances where, I felt isolated and not connected, where I wasn't sure about what tools were available and which tool would be the most effective for me to use. I've been successful sometimes and sometimes not so much. And guess what? That is okay because you will be successful and then there'll be sometimes when it's not successful. The point is to learn from it and to grow. So when I first started working remotely, as I shared, I made several mistakes. Okay, more than several mistakes. I quickly learned experience is the best teacher is not entirely correct. Experience which has been reflected upon, learned from, and applied correctly is the best teacher. And the reason I tell you that is because, like I said, I've made several mistakes. And here's the thing, if you don't reflect upon those mistakes, if you don't learn from them, then you will repeat them. And it wasn't until I started to sit back and take time to think about what did I do? Why did I do it? How could I have done it differently? That I started to experience success. Because then I understood that there was maybe a better way to do it or a different way to do it. And I didn't make the same mistake. So, experience, which has been reflected upon, learned from, and applied correctly, is the best teacher. But I also want to encourage you to understand that we are human and we all make mistakes. As an educator, I like to create an environment which it is safe for people to fail forward because we all fail. None of us is good at everything, but we have to try. So, understanding and creating a space in which failure is not final is critical to success. So, understand that you have to take time to reflect on your experience, to learn from your experience. Then you can apply that experience because that is the best teacher. Today, more people than ever are working remotely, and the challenges with remote workers continue to increase. And I am here to share with you that I believe that we are going to see remote working continue to expand beyond what we currently are experiencing. Why? Because it is beneficial for a lot of different reasons for organizations. It reduces cost because I don't have to build buildings. It also reduces cost in that for those who travel, I don't have to pay travel costs because we can now use technology to work remotely and to connect with individuals. People like working remotely because it gives them an opportunity to have a more flexible work schedule to meet the demands that they may have that are outside of work. It also helps people to achieve work-life balance. So there are many reasons why remote working is a very effective option for individuals. And I believe that it is going to increase over time. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about 10 mistakes remote teams should avoid. If you're a remote worker whose team is underperforming, feels isolated and disconnected, or is unsure about what productivity tools to use, avoiding 10 common mistakes will significantly improve your remote work experience. Now, by avoiding these common mistakes, you'll move towards getting yourself and your team on the right track for high performance. Now, I know some of you are wondering, I am not the leader of the team. Can I use these 10 mistakes to help my team be productive? And the answer is a resounding yes, you can, because you are a member of the team. So, as a member of the team, if you avoid these 10 mistakes and you share this information with your teammates as well as your leader, it will help the team be more productive. So, I'm going to check the chat box again. Just want to make sure that I'm staying connected with you and answering your questions in a timely manner. Are you ready? I am so excited. So let's examine 10 common mistakes your remote team should avoid. The first mistake, not creating space for conversations. Check in with your team members to ask how things are going, both professionally and personally. So, what does this mean? It means creating time for social interactions. Yes, in a remote work environment, it is very important that you create opportunities for team members to connect on a personal level. In order for a team to be highly productive, it is based upon a foundation of trust. And trust can only be built when there are interpersonal connections. Therefore, you have to be very intentional around creating opportunities for social interactions when working in a remote work environment. You have to create opportunities for people to connect. You also need to conduct weekly or bi weekly check ins. Just because you're in a remote work environment does not mean that you are not checking on and holding people accountable for the professional responsibilities that they have. So set up check ins, and that frequency is dependent upon the work that needs to be done as well as the individual performing. Manage your calendar. So don't stack meetings back to back to back because you want to create space for conversations. You want to have time to also connect with individuals. So manage your calendar and manage the time that you allot for your meetings. Remember, building a high performing team requires you to be intentional about how you manage your time and intentional about creating opportunities for your team to connect with each other, to build relationships with each other, and to build trust with each other. So, mistake number one is not creating space for conversations. The second mistake is rushing through meetings. Make sure to give remote team members a chance to contribute. And this goes back to making sure you have space for conversations. You see, it's more difficult to tell when someone is trying to speak during a virtual meeting. So pause and give your remote team a chance to chime in. Create opportunities for every member of the team to contribute. So establish an expectation that everyone speaks. I am a strong proponent for norms, and your meetings should have norms that have been established by your team as to how our meetings will be conducted. And I encourage you, as one of your norms, is to have equity of voice. That means everyone is speaking. That should be a part of the norm, that everyone is going to contribute. So when you establish your agenda, you should create an opportunity for everyone to share out where they're at on their specific project or task, which means now everyone has an opportunity to speak, but also everyone should have an opportunity to contribute to that person. So create time and space in your meetings for people to share and to grow, because I can only get better when other people are helping me improve upon what I'm doing. So, mistake number two is rushing through meetings. Remember, don't stack your meetings back to back. Give time for the meetings to have space and for all of the members to contribute. The third mistake is not setting clear expectations. You know, your team members need to know exactly what you want from them. And this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you are the leader of the team or you are a team member. Everyone needs to know exactly what you want from them. So provide detailed directions and be extremely clear about your expectations and any deadlines. Now, every leader has their pet peeves. I have mine and you have yours. Here's the question for you. What are yours? And more importantly, does your team know them? If they don't, make sure you share it with them. For example, if one of your pet peeves is timeliness and it really bothers you that people are not on time to your meetings, then you need to let people know that. Because if not, then what will happen is your frustration will come through in the meeting. And this is especially important when you're working in a remote environment, because that frustration will shut down conversation. So it's very important that people know what your non negotiables are. And it's all right to let them know that, because you want to clearly define expectations. Because when you do that, it will reduce conflict and set your team up for success. And that's what you want. You want to make sure that everybody understands what is expected of them. So, mistake number three is not setting clear expectations. And when people don't know what's expected, then they do what they think they're supposed to do, which can cause conflict and frustration and therefore impact productivity. Oh, the fourth common mistake is forgetting regular performance reviews. All team members need regular feedback. Therefore, regular performance reviews are a critical component to having a highly effective team. Regular performance reviews ensure your team members are working hard and consistently providing their best work. That's critical to having a highly effective team. So it's important to still do your coaching sessions, and you can do them virtually. So set up a timeline, set up coaching sessions on a regular basis, and give feedback during those coaching sessions. You know, it should never be a surprise at the annual performance review what that person's performance has been. They should know before they engage with you what their performance has been from your perspective. It's no different than working in a traditional office environment. You're just working in a remote environment. So, ensuring that you are doing your regular performance review is critical to the success of the team. Nothing increases a team's frustration and creates conflict when when they don't feel that all team members are being held to the same standards. So, do your virtual coaching sessions. Also, if you are the leader, provide an opportunity for team members to give you feedback on your performance because how you perform as the leader directly impacts the performance of the team. So, mistake number four is forgetting regular performance reviews. Mistake number five, micromanaging. Constant progress reports and check ins can be counterproductive. Now, especially if you are a new leader to working in remote environments, understanding that constant check ins will negatively impact productivity. So, how can you address this? Well, create a system that allows for daily check ins but doesn't distract from your team's workflow. When you do that, then you don't micromanage. Those daily check ins or bi weekly check ins are an opportunity for you to just get a quick update. So set up a schedule for updates. If you want to just have everybody check in and see what's on the plate for today, that's a quick daily check in. It shouldn't be any longer than 30 minutes to an hour. For the more in depth, detailed check ins, then set up weekly meetings And that may be a 2 hour window, a 3 hour window. But the key here is to schedule for updates and schedule based on the types of updates that you're trying to gather information on. It's also important to establish a culture of accessibility. So share with your team when you are available, that they can check in with you if they have questions. And also let them know what's the best way for them to communicate with you. That goes back to setting expectations and establishing how you like information shared with you. That's important because when you don't do that, then you will have a tendency to micromanage. So let people know how you like to communicate. Even if you are a team member and your work is dependent upon other people in your team, let them know, how do you like to receive information, so that you are not perceived as micromanaging the process with them. So the fifth mistake is micromanaging. And this goes back to a point that John had mentioned earlier around understanding people's prior experience with working in a remote environment. Because new people to working remotely tend to put into effect things that they did in a traditional environment, but in a more hyper focused manner, which is a mistake I made. So learn from my mistake. The sixth mistake is not setting time for cross team communication. Team members should feel connected and work collaboratively to achieve goals. So it is important to set up regular team wide meetings so everyone can interact. This will help to build that team cohesiveness that you're looking for. So build collaboration time into the schedule. And yes, you can leverage technology to do that, because all of the technology platforms have the opportunity for you to put people into teams and for them to go off into different small group rooms and work together. So that may be something that you include in your weekly scheduled meeting. You may also give people access to technology in which they can set their own schedules for collaborative time. But it is extremely important that in order for the team to perform at a high level, that they spend time working together. They have to know what each other is doing and how it connects to the overall goal, the overall mission of what we have to accomplish in our team. So take the time to set up cross team communication. I know it takes more time in a remote work environment, but the payoff will be higher for the entire team if you do this, just like you would do in a traditional office environment. So make sure that you're giving your team members the opportunity to work collaboratively. Remember, mistake number one was not giving your team the opportunity to connect with each other. By giving them this time to do cross team communication, you're helping them build trust with each other. And that trust is critical to the success of the team. So I see we have a question. How many are interested in return for remote work webinars? Okay, well, that's a team question or question that can be answered by you within the chat box. We're going to continue to talk about not setting the mistakes that people make in remote working environments. So, mistake number 7, relying too much on text. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, that's a generational issue, but actually, it's not. You see, texts are great for quick updates. And I use text messages all the time with my team, especially when I need information quickly. And I find that I can just shoot off a quick text and get pretty much a very quick response. But a phone call or video call is better for discussing complex issues. So here's a word of advice. If you find yourself taking more than a few minutes typing something out, consider jumping on a call instead. Now, the benefit of working in a remote environment is you have access to multiple communication platforms. So you can video conference, you can text, you can email, you can use platforms like Slack to share information. You can use SharePoint to give everyone access to information and everyone can work on the document at the same time. There are many different communication platforms out there. So do not limit yourself to one type of platform. And yes, text messages are great. I use text messages all the time, especially when I'm in a meeting and I need to get some quick information around a topic that may have come up that wasn't on the agenda, or someone asked me for information that I don't readily have available to me. I'll just say, let me send a quick text and I will get that information to you. Hopefully, I can do it before the meeting ends, and therefore it's taken off my plate or my list of things to do. Sometimes that doesn't happen. So not saying don't text. What I am saying is don't make the mistake of relying too much on text. Because the other thing about text messages is it may leave members of your group out. And remember, you want to make sure your group is well informed. So use text messages, but also leverage multiple communication platforms to enhance the productivity of the team. Number 8, being too casual. Now, that has multiple connotations. So first, let's talk about what does being too casual mean in a personal sense. We've all seen the communication around, uh, I can just show up to my remote team without having any responsibilities. No, you want to make sure that you have developed a formal agreement with a set of roles and responsibilities. So, your role and your responsibility means you show up to your meetings prepared, just like you would do if you were in a traditional office environment. Make sure every team member knows what they are responsible for, what their role is as a member of the team, what is the goal that we're working towards, and how does that goal fit into the organization's overall responsibilities. So having clearly defined roles and responsibilities is critical. Make sure that everyone understands their goals and tasks. So I can't be just watching TV and then, oh, my watch beeps. It's 5 minutes before the meeting, and I'm going to now jump on my call, my video conference, and chime in with my responsibilities. No, I need to take the time to do what I'm supposed to do, just like I would have done if I was in a traditional office environment, to be prepared for my meeting. Do not fall into the trap of being too casual. It will impact your performance review. Number 9, not being aware of time zone differences. I know that sounds like common sense, but it is so important to be aware of what time it is where your team members are. Differences can affect deadlines and work events. So make sure to schedule time that works for everyone. Be sensitive to the needs of your team members. So as a leader, I had on my desk a desk pad, and that desk pad had 5 small clocks in it. And the reason for that is I wanted to know what time it was in different time zones. That way, as a leader, I could set meeting times that worked for everybody else. Now, can you always get everyone together at the same time? It may not be possible, but as a leader, try to do the best that you can. And as a team member, remind your team that you are in different time zones. And so when someone says, well, can we meet at this time? If that's going to mean that, you have to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning to do that, then you should say to the team, could we shift the time a little later or maybe a little earlier so that, you know, it's not 1 o'clock in the morning for me? It's perfectly okay to say that. The reason why you need to be sensitive to time zones is because once again, it goes to frustration levels of the team, which will impact productivity. So be sensitive to the needs of your team members. And yes, that may mean that it's inconvenient for some people because it may be that you have to have your meeting at 7 p.m., which is inconvenient for you, but it is convenient for the other members of your team. So be aware of the different time zones. It directly impacts people's availability. And the last common mistake is not establishing routines. Don't expect all remote workers to be great self-managers. Most of them need help in establishing a work routine. So clearly define ways to define and track goals. This is where you should leverage project management tools to create schedules. Have daily check-ins. That daily check-in does not have to be a video conference check-in, but it should include as a part of your daily routine check-in periods for individual team members. This is where you also need to be very clear around your expectations for responses to emails, to text messages, to phone calls. Set up schedules and have people share their schedules so that each of you know what are they each other working on at that particular time, and if that person is accessible for you to connect with them. But don't assume, especially if this person is new to working in a remote environment, that they will set up routines to manage their time effectively. I have had conversations, numerous conversations with individuals around working remote. And I will just share with you When I first started working remotely, I did not establish good routines, and it directly impacted my personal productivity. So establish routines. 10 mistakes remote teams should avoid. Now, which mistake is the most prevalent on your team? Please type your answer in the chat box. So once again, please write your answer in the chat box. Which of the 10? Number 4. Okay. Being too casual, not establishing good routines. Now I have another question for you. But before we get to that, let's review. We've talked about not creating space for conversations, rushing through meetings, not setting clear expectations, forgetting regular performance reviews, micromanaging, not setting time for cross-team communication, relying too much on text, being too casual, not being aware of time zone differences, and not establishing routines. Now, let's discuss next steps. Here's another question for you. Based on what you've learned in this master class, how effective is your remote team at avoiding common mistakes? A, very effective, B, somewhat effective, and C, not very effective at all. So please answer using the poll tab on your device. Let's take 10 seconds to respond. Now remember, your responses are anonymous. So how effective do you think your team is? Okay. I'm going to close the poll in about 5 seconds. And we've closed the poll. So I can see that 92% of you said somewhat effective, and 8% said not very effective. So thank you. Thank you very much. So we spent nearly an hour discussing common remote team mistakes and how to avoid them. However, to improve, your team will require more action on your part. So let's discuss next steps. The next step is to identify the top 3 mistakes your remote team is making and take action to avoid them. Remember, earlier I asked you which mistake is the most prevalent on your team. Well, that will be number 1 on your list. Using your masterclass worksheet to identify 2 more mistakes your team should be avoiding. Now, once you've identified 3 mistakes to take action on, you will develop SMART goals and add the timeline to your calendar. Now, I hope you remember SMART goals, but if you don't, let's do a quick review. SMART goals were created by George T. Doran, who published them in a paper called There's a Smart Way to Write Management Goals and Objectives. So the acronym SMART stands for specific, which is you have a very specific goal. It is measurable, which is M. It is achievable. It is relevant, and it is time bound. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. Develop a SMART goal for taking action for each mistake to avoid and add the timeline to your calendar. Now, there's just one more thing. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I love this quote. It is one of my favorites because think about what Henry Ford said. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Because what you think drives your actions. You must believe the SMART goals you set will get yourself and your team on the right track for high performance in a remote environment. Work to accomplish them, and you will make a difference. Now, let's check the chat box for questions. So, how do you get all team members to be prepared for team members? That is a great question, John. First, I would recommend that you publish an agenda for your meeting. Send that agenda out 2 to 3 days in advance because that will set the tone for your meeting. Remember, be very clear with your expectations around what you expect people to do during the meeting. Set up clearly defined norms for how people are expected to behave during the meeting, how the meeting is to be conducted, and then hold people accountable. If you see that you have a team member who is not prepared for the meetings, then have a coaching session with that individual around expectations and find out from them what they're struggling with and how you can help them be better prepared and to increase their performance. So I hope that helped with you. And I see we've run out of time, and therefore, if you have additional questions, I will try to respond to them via email. This concludes our remote work masterclass. Thank you so much for your time and your attention today. I truly appreciate it. I want to remind you to complete your next step. Develop your SMART goals for your top 3 mistakes to avoid. And don't forget to watch for your email for the Leading Remote Teams online course announcement. As we close with our webinar, I just want to encourage you to take the opportunity to enjoy your working remote experience. It is beneficial and it is helpful when you enjoy the work that you do because it will help you help your team enjoy the work they do. This is your leadership guide, Dr. Kim Moore, and it has been my pleasure to serve you. Thank you and enjoy your work remote experience.